Welcome to Crunch Time, a program dedicated to helping you survive the crunch times in your life, whether they are caused by accidents, natural disasters, poverty, economic recession, depression, or all-out economic collapse, or whether they are caused by your realization that today's food supply is being contaminated by artificial fertilizers, pesticides, and genetically modified organisms, and over-processing of crops into what can hardly be called food. We want to help you through the crunch times in your future by teaching you what we have learned about organic gardening, food storage, and food preparation. We'll bring you into our kitchen and into our garden and share with you what we have learned, hopefully before your crunch times arrive. Now here is Chef Francois. Today we're going to make a meal or a couple meals out of some vegetables we just pulled out of the garden. We have kale to the left, and then spinach in the middle, Brussels sprouts to the lower right. We have a brand new rutabaga, and we have a squash that we've been working on for a while, and we have a bag of frozen corn that we made earlier in the summer. Welcome back to Crunch Time, where Jesus is King and all our desires are to serve Him. We've been talking about leftover turkey for a while now and haven't got into it. So today I'm finally going to make something out of our turkey carcass. This is connective tissue, very small scrap meat, cartilage that's been boiled down, and a whole bunch of good protein that we got out of our turkey carcass. We still have big chunks of meat as well in our other containers. But this stuff here is stuff that most people would have thrown away. I also have leftover from Thanksgiving this packet of stuff that you make gravy out of. It's basically flour and water. But don't want to waste it, so I'm going to go ahead and use that today. So the first thing we're going to do today is I'm going to cut up all this stuff. We've got kale from the garden yesterday. We've got spinach from the garden yesterday. We've got Brussels sprouts from the garden a week ago. We've got some frozen corn from this past summer. We've got a rutabaga right straight out of the garden yesterday. Today is December 2nd. We have a squash that we've been working on for a while. I took the seeds out and roasted them last night. We have the turkey. We have the turkey gelatin with a little bit of fat on top. And we've got some gelatin here. I'll show you what that looks like. This is gelatin that was right off the bottom of the turkey pan when we drained it out at the end of Thanksgiving Day. And so I'm going to chop up this kale first. And I'm going to chop it up basically the same way we do collard greens. I'm going to strip the main vein of the leaf, this part. I'm going to strip that right out, leave what's left, and then we're going to chop it up. Basically what it's going to be is we're going to make a casserole that's going to go into a pie. If you've ever had chicken pot pie, that's basically what we're making, except it's going to be made out of turkey. And the gravy is going to be made out of the turkey gravy stuff that came with the Thanksgiving turkey. But in that gravy, we're going to have some non-conventional things. We are going to have corn. But we are also going to have, I should probably sharpen my knife.
sharpener. It's got metal cutting thing over here for coarse sharpening. And when you draw it through, you see some shavings end up on the counter. And then there's a ceramic plastic one over there. Whenever you sharpen your knife, you always want to get rid of the shavings there and off the counter in case our food gets in there. Get cut a little better now. Oh, much better. Now we do have collard greens in the freezer we could have used, but since we have more than we can handle fresh kale in the garden, I figure we might as well use that. Basically, I'm cutting these into, 1/4-inch wide strips. It's going to go right into the cooked gravy and then into the pie crust, and it's going to cook in the oven. This will all wilt right down into almost nothing. I will take out my colander. Put all of that right in there. And then I'll take and do the same thing with the spinach, except I won't remove the stems because the spinach stems are not coarse. I will cut it in both directions though, so I can make these fairly small pieces. And of course, if you don't like greens in your chicken pot pie or turkey pot pie, you can put whatever you want. I'm going to add corn to it as well. But since we have so many greens, I think it's good to get those vitamins. I have Brussels sprouts here that never really fully developed into hard sprouts. But there are some chunky pieces and there are some leafy pieces. And crunchy pieces will give some good texture, as will the corn. And the leafy pieces will give us some flavor and some vitamins. So, these stems we can just throw in the garbage. Alright, rutabaga. We are going to shred rutabaga and squash, and we're going to have a big pile of shredded stuff here. And we're going to use that for pie, cake, and the casserole that goes inside. It goes inside the chicken pot pie, or in our case today, turkey pot pie. This rutabaga was fresh out of the garden yesterday. And this is much better than the pieces of stored rutabaga that we've got on the shelf. Alright, I should have a big bowl for this. And I'm just going to take that. stuff by hand with a knife. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this up and mix some of this with it as well. I'll show you how I'm going to do that. Basically just going to cut the ring in half and just grab a hold of it like that and grate it up the same way. So we're going to take a break now while I grate all this stuff up. Okay, welcome back. We have shredded our greens, Brussels sprouts, kale, and spinach. We have shredded our squash, and we have shredded our rutabaga. Now it looks like I've got about 4 or 5 cups of each of these. And we're going to be using whatever it takes in the gravy. I'm only making 1 pie, so if I fill this up with gravy and turkey and all the stuff that I'm adding to it, then that'll just fit into 1 pie, because the pie is about the same size as that. So I'm going to turn my oven on, and I'm going to start off with the gelatin from the turkey. And we're just going to put that in there. That will melt by itself. And then we will make the gravy. I better have a bowl to put this in because this will make a mess once I open it. Hopefully it hasn't spoiled from being sitting in the refrigerator for a week or on the shelf for a couple of days. Get the glasses on so I can see what I'm doing. Doesn't take long to melt this stuff. So the stuff in the bag, I guess technically is called roux, which is just a mixture of well, it's brown, so it's got more than just flour and water. Better smell it, make sure. Ooh, it's got seasoning. This is even better yet. And I'm going to go ahead and pour some of this in. I'm sure I'm going to have to boil it down some. Make some decent gravy. Leave the rest of it right here in this bowl, and hopefully it won't leak out. It's starting to boil, so it's time to mix it. And of course, we don't want lumpy, so we gotta, as this glutenizes or stiffens. Oh, this looks so good. I forgot all about the seasonings that were in there. I'm glad I didn't try to make it out of just my survival stash downstairs, which would have been alright as long as I'd seasoned it, but I don't make gravy that often, so I don't really know what seasoning is appropriate. It's getting plenty thick. I'm going to go ahead and put in my turkey. About half. Well, we take the camera and give a shot of that. Gravy, nice and thick. Meat. Now, I want my corn in there, so I'm going to have to turn that up in heat because the corn is really cold. think when I put those two in, it's going to be at the last minute, just before I put it into the pie crust. I'm going to put all of this corn. If I need more gravy, because I'm adding too much stuff, I can always add some more. Certainly enough corn. Corn is my favorite vegetable. Actually, it's not a vegetable, it's a grain. That's probably why it's one of my favorite. Alright, it's getting hot already, so I'll turn that down. Now, I'm going to add some rutabaga. And mix that in. That can cook longer than the squash. This will be a fairly firm pie filling when I'm done. Now, the leftover rutabaga and the leftover squash, what did we do with it last time? Actually, last time we didn't have leftover. We just made it special for a coleslaw. And so we can do the same thing with what's left over here today. All right, mix in that much. I got plenty left over for squash, but I'm also going to be making pie and cake out of both of those. So this will make a good pie. Shepherd's pie, chicken pot pie, whatever you want to call it. I guess shepherd's pie is usually ground beef, corn, and potatoes. Since we don't have any of those except for the corn. Alright, one more time with the camera. I'm going to turn the heat right off right now because I don't want the squash to cook about more than it already is. So we've got turkey, which I may add a little bit more of yet. We've got gravy. We've got corn, rutabaga, and squash. It is turned off. All I need is a bowl to put it in, so I could use it. I could leave it right in the frying pan, I suppose. I'm going to need the bowl to make pie crust, cake mix. Let's turn the heat right back on a little bit. And we can also use our greens in our coleslaw, or we can just use regular salad. You know what? I think I could put this in a big bowl and mix it a lot easier. These pieces of kale are just a little bit too big. I have up here for some pie and for a serving of just plain casserole without pie crust. I only want to make one pie. Greens don't take up much space, they just take a while to mix in. They give it some good texture and some good flavor and some good vitamins though. Okay, one more camera shot. And that heat right off. So, I can simmer, cook down greens a little bit. First when the pie crust is added, put it in the oven. I'll show you how to make pie dough. This is whole wheat flour and I want regular flour. You know what? I'm going to use whole wheat flour for everything today. Pie dough will be a little bit less gluten-y, but okay, 2 cups of flour. And then bowl, a half cup of oil. I'm going to change my recipe slightly today. Instead of a half a cup of oil and 3 or 4 tablespoons of milk, I'm going to have a half a cup of oil and a half a cup of milk. And I could use my soy milk, but since I've got a bunch of regular white milk here, it's going to go bad in the fridge if I don't use it. Okay. In my pie crust, I also want some salt. I have some sea salt right here, just about enough. Quarter to a half a teaspoon. And get myself a fork. We want to mix together our milk and our oil. I'll do it over top of here so in case I spill any, it goes into the flour. Used to make pie dough with lard, Crisco, and cold water, and ice cubes. All that stuff is very, very difficult. This one takes just about 2 minutes. You just mix it together. The reason I added more milk than normal is 2 reasons. Number one, last couple times I made it exactly with the recipe. It was a little bit dry, crumbly, and I had to add more milk or water. And we've got whole wheat flour here, which has got a lot of grit, which is not going to glutenize. What we've got here will crumble apart. Hopefully, I've got enough water in there so it'll glutenize all the wheat that's in there. Make it into a ball. And we're going to cover it up with a piece of wax paper that we're later going to use to roll it out on. And I'll take a break on the camera, and I'll make 2 or 3 more batches of pie crust. Maybe even one with regular flour so you can see what that looks like. So, we'll take a break and we'll be right back. Before I spread out the pie dough and try to make a pie out of it, I want to show you, this here is the whole wheat flour dough, and it's just breaking apart so bad you can't even make dough. This one here, on the other hand, glutenized quite well, and it works good. So what I'm going to do is put half and half and mix it together. We've mixed the whole wheat flour dough with the regular flour dough, and we've got something here that looks like marbled pie crust. So we're just going to put our pie tin right on top of it. We're going to put our cutting board underneath it. Slide it over like that. Now flip it over. Take our cutting board off. Take our wax paper off. Pick up the edges so it falls in. And we're going to make our pie crust out of that. And as I pour it in, you can see what it's like. Now, I was thinking about what to do for the top. Whether to put another layer of pie crust or whether to put some shredded pumpkin and rutabaga on top, or put some sliced rutabaga and pumpkin on top. I think what I'm going to do is take the shredded stuff that I just saved and just sprinkle it on top. But before I do, I'll show. Well, here's what the pies looked like after we cooked them. That's about all the time we have tonight. In the last minute of our show, I'd like to tell you about the real reason for this show. Jesus Christ, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Without Jesus as my Savior, I would not be confident entering into these trying times that lay ahead. If Jesus is not your Lord and Savior, I suggest you send me an email at crunchtime@roadrunner.com and ask me how you can join the God who loves you, His Son Jesus Christ, and His disciples in everlasting life. For now, I say to you, God bless and keep you and yours. I'll see you next week on Crunch Time with Chef Francois.